Hello, everyone. Again, as the case may be, for those who are watching what I'm referring to as the supercut, the full video coming in at roughly an hour, give or take, maybe slightly more with the intro and closing credits and elements. Uh, the way I sort of envision this, as I mentioned in the general introduction, is that each of three different, I guess, toolkits as a way of describing it would be kind of a good way to organize this discussion. So we're going to start out in this particular segment speaking to learning management systems, the LMS, as the acronym goes. And then shortly after roughly 10 minutes or so, we're going to switch into another segment, if you will, speaking to content management systems, somewhat different, not entirely different, but somewhat different from LMS. We're going to call that one CMS. And finally, the last sort of I guess, bundle of tools, the last toolkit of sorts that we'll be looking at uh, prior to the end of the video is what we're going to call productivity software, productivity suites of apps, such as Google and Microsoft Office 365. So this is the kind of thing where I've actually done a number of these kinds of videos and sessions with Dr. Gurney before, and just as will sometimes happen, the recordings are no longer accessible online. It's been a couple years, more than a couple years, since I was last on the faculty with the university, but I just assume that as part of regular routine and maintenance, that those are no longer available. If I remember what those videos tended to involve at the time, they were more sort of into screencasting, and that's cool. I definitely recognize, but for these topics, given that I'm not making use of the university's infrastructure or applications or other resources to deliver this, I felt like perhaps a more conversational style would be wanted here. That's also a bit in keeping with the podcast format, which Dr. Doug Reed and I have kind of come up with together over the past couple of years. And I just feel like this is a really good opportunity to have an open dialogue, an open discussion, if you will. So, to speak to the learning management system, the most obvious example that I can think of is a system called Moodle. This is presumably the system wherein you're accessing a lot of the content for this particular course, Education 5030, as well as likely your other classes, the majority of them, if not all of them, through Thompson Rivers. So that's why I have not an actual picture of Thompson Rivers behind me, but an AI generated picture. So this is what Mage AI app thinks that Thompson Rivers looks like, which isn't too far off the mark, but I digress. Bit of a risk sometimes with the conversational style. To speak specifically to Moodle, when I talk about Moodle, I think what I want to do here, or any learning management system, I think I want to speak to a few key questions here. So we're just going to try and speak to what is it, why do we use it, where do we find it, and a little bit of how to use it. So to begin with, when we're talking about learning management systems, I mean, for me, I think of them as being fundamentally behind an institutional firewall. So when I think about online teaching capabilities for teaching online, affordances, benefits, things that you can do, um, there's a fair amount of similarity between the function and capability of a learning management system like Moodle or Brightspace or Blackboard, and there are many others. Those are just three kind of the more well-known ones. So in terms of like what you're having the application do, it's not terribly different in a learning management system than the kinds of content, if you will, and the way of presenting content that might appear with a CMS, content management system, which is to say something that exists on the open web, so called, the freely accessible internet, as opposed to a learning environment that exists behind an institutional password and authentication process. So that's kind of a major distinguishing feature for me. I guess I would go further and say what distinguishes LMS from, say, other types of learning environments, learning systems, is that among the bundled in tools, there's a lot of emphasis, a lot of use placed on not just presentation of various kinds of content. So whether that's PDFs for reading, links to external websites, various files, PowerPoint slides, videos, and the like, all of these things can be hosted and shared again, very easily on a publicly facing website, such as through WordPress. But what's the LMS, Moodle, and or Blackboard, and or quite a number of these others, one of the primary features is the grading and assessment, the evaluation. So, for instance, the gradebook, which is populated by tests, quizzes, and other types of assessment and evaluation activities within the environment. The automated grading feature is, it's been my experience, both as a person who's delivered training and education of sorts through various learning management packages over the years. I've had that experience as being a teacher with several of these systems, but then also I've had the experience of being the person who helps the teacher. So when I worked at Thompson Rivers, one of my primary functions was to provide support for Moodle for faculty and staff who needed to use it for teaching or for other purposes. So I can safely say, based on those experiences, that the gradebook is a factor which really drives a lot of the use, particularly in larger classes, wherein it's just uh, there may be limits on teaching support. It may be 50, 75, 100 plus students in a class. So one of the great things about these learning management systems, the LMS, is that the grading function, whether it's a quiz or a test of some variety, it allows for an efficiency of scale. It allows you to deliver those kinds of evaluations and assessment for very large numbers of students, and at the same time provides a significant amount of automated grading through certain types of tests or quizzes. Now, again, I'm most familiar with the Moodle environment for this, but all of these systems are meant to have the same features. Far be it from me in this introductory kind of lecture, this introductory kind of discussion, to give you a breakdown, a column by column by column comparison of these systems, although that would certainly be a worthy endeavor. And come to think of it, if anybody feels like taking that on, I'd be interested if you were to share that with me. So, in addition to efficiency of scale with regards to evaluation and assessment, A lot of proponents of these kind of systems find great value in analytics. So when I say analytics, what I'm referring to is, again, this is by no means an official definition. This is just me sort of providing a working definition. My understanding of learning analytics are that these are effectively the traces, the indicators that are left as a result of usage by individual students within a learning environment. So every time you log, or a student, a user logs into a learning environment, there's a record kept of that. How long, what time they logged in, how long they logged in, and if you felt like it, you could go at least with Moodle. I can't speak in this case to other of the systems particularly, but I'm assuming that they have similar features. You have the ability to tell actually an entire pathway of use through an individual's, whether it's an individual session. So for instance, a student looked at a PDF or downloaded a file, then they maybe watched a certain amount of a video, all of it, what they looked at, how long they looked at it for, and potentially the kind of use that was made of it is available through very detailed logs of activity, which can be then aggregated into reports of usage across multiple sessions, an entire semester, individual courses. It's pretty helpful from a learning standpoint, proponents would argue, because effectively in an online or fully or even a blended class, depending on how it's arranged, attendance is effectively measured by checking into the course environment, and whether it's leaving something in a discussion board for a comment, or even just reviewing or accessing other resources, there's always going to be some trace of that. So again, that's a pretty strong feature for a lot of educators who sort of can look at the attendance, so to speak, last login dates, patterns of use by users to determine, oh, perhaps this person is struggling, perhaps they need to be some sort of intervention or the like. So I tend to think of these as being a helpful feature, even though ultimately it's. I think as a student, you just kind of accept that when you go into these systems and use them, that anything you do can and will potentially be tracked. And again, that's just something that people, I think, need to be aware of, both from the teaching side and from the student side. Um, so those are just a few kind of aspects of these sorts of systems. Super convenient for those who teach the same courses over multiple semesters or multiple years. You have the ability to clone or copy an entire course shell. So by course shell, basically what I mean is a specific course website within the larger learning management system for the institution. So the course shell that you use, for instance, for a fall version of Education 5000, let's suppose it's being offered the following semester for whatever reason. All that the teacher would have to do is make a copy of that particular course shell, and that'll be generated, all the evaluation, all the assessment, all the content, but not the student generated content. I mean, you could, but that would have to be specifically brought in. So convenience, in as much as once you have your learning environment set up in such a way that you are comfortable with, you know what your resources are, you know what you need to do, minus a few typical changes in a semester or academic year, and then as well being able to share your entire body of course material with, say, another instructor, or perhaps you may be on the receiving end being able to import either entirely or partially a fellow colleague's assessment, evaluation, and other content from within their shell. So automated assessment, convenience of use, the idea here that you can have engagement with student through learning analytics. These are all pretty good reasons why learning management systems are as popular as they are. Uh, Again, I think that this is a situation where the need for privacy, in as much as only registered students can generally access a learning management software package, getting into an institutional firewall, and being subject to the code of conduct across the university for online engagement. I think that that just gives people a lot of comfort as opposed to teaching and learning measures on the open web. So I did say I was trying to only spend about 10 minutes or so on this topic, and I have now well exceeded 16 minutes. So we'll just pull this one aside, for now, and there'll be some notes for sure, a paragraph or two speaking a little bit more to this. So for those who may just be experiencing this for the first time, I would say that in my real final point here on this topic is that it's good for you to know how to use one of these systems, even if you don't necessarily have any reason to use it right at the moment. So what I mean is, all of these systems, just about, I think probably all of them, have free trials available or free, very, very limited licenses. Moodle Cloud is sort of a de facto publicly accessible, free hosted provider of Moodle courses. So my recommendation for people, regardless even of which of these systems they're using, is to obtain access to uh, a limited license or free license if you can get it for one of these systems, and just set up what I call sort of a sandbox course. That is to say, a class, a hypothetical class, where you can set things up and just get familiar with the features, the functionality of the system in general. And then you kind of have your materials nearby. You have your materials close at hand within those courses, such that you can export them easily or readily into your live class if and when such is assigned. Also, I've been using Moodle as an example quite a lot. For those who are in K to 12 careers, who are planning on teaching specifically to K to 12, I would also include the Google Classroom as a learning management software in and among the other Google apps for education, which we'll be speaking to a little bit later. Thank you for paying attention to this so far, and we'll see you presently for the next segment, which is to do with the CMS, Content Management System.